All right, guys, 340 Gsxr here again with another video. I wanted to go over a loss of power issue I was having. Now, the bike's in '08. I would say it's pretty good condition. There's some cosmetic things, but nothing too major. So far, I haven't had just under a year. Probably about 6 months, half a year. I've owned the bike. Now I bought it with 6,100 miles for an '08. Pretty sure they're original. I got it in Chandler, Arizona, and from a dealership, Chandler Power Sports or Motorsports or something like that. Now I drove it home, and I live about 30 minutes south from there. I rode it home. It rode just fine. And then I started noticing a few days later from buying it that I'd be in not first and second gear. I wouldn't do it in first and second gear, but third, fourth, fifth, and sixth, all at low RPMs, about 6,000 to anywhere from 8,000 RPM. It would my exhaust would gargle. I would hear some gargling, and that's while I'm on the throttle, not, no backfiring, it just would gargle. And then I could feel the power go down. Now, there's actually three ways to, once it got to that point, there's only two ways to fix it, two ways. Okay, now I would either let off the throttle and engage the clutch, and it would go back to idle, and it would be just fine. I'd release the clutch again, still in third gear, and give it throttle, and it'd be fine for a little bit, and then it would start acting up again if I stayed in between that RPM range. Now, if I went to 10 all the way to 16,000, the bike would run just fine, no problem. Okay. Now, I did a lot of research, and one of the things I found on YouTube was my exhaust valve regulator actuator, whatever you want to call it. It's down at the exhaust. Let me show you. Somewhere down in there, that little thing right there is the valve. Now the cables run up around in here, and the motor sits right underneath the tank. Okay. Now what I did was I unplugged it. Issues still happen, and I end up losing a bolt to the motor where you hooked up the cable. So I just took the motor and everything out. Now, with that being said, my F1 light came on. I ordered on eBay a servo eliminator, deletes, whatever you want to call it. Plugged it in, worked just fine, just to get the light to shut off. So I played around with that for a while. Then I went as far as I figured, it's a 10-year-old bike. Maybe the filter's clogged. Okay, some people said they had issues on some of the forums I read. So I order a pump with the filter, not a Suzuki. It's not an actual Suzuki pump. And I believe you can't just buy the actual pump, the fuel pump. You have to buy the whole assembly, which is $200 to $300, give or take. And that's your pressure valve regulator, your filter, your pump, everything. Okay, I didn't want to do that. You could buy the little filters, if you want to call them strainer, filter, whatever the correct term is. We get the point. It cleans the fuel essentially before it gets into goes into the injectors. But I just bought the whole system. I said, well, it's $20 on eBay. I might as well just replace it. So I go in there, take the tank off, replace it. Real simple. One thing I've learned about Suzuki and the Gsxr, I know a lot of people talk crap about them. I don't know why, but or maybe it's just the riders that ride them. I still don't know why. But they're real simple to work on, that I've noticed. I'm not a mechanic. I didn't go to school for any of this stuff. Just simple videos on YouTube, and it's so simple to go in there and change. So I change out the pump and the strainer. Drive, issue still happens. I'm having a conversation with a buddy of mine, and I remember him saying something, maybe it could be an O2 sensor. So I looked online, some forums, some people said that yes, it was an O2 sensor. So I went down, found my O2 sensor, unplugged it, and sure enough, one day I took it to work. I 20 minutes to work, 20 minutes back from work. The issue didn't happen. I was in third, fourth, fifth, sixth gear, all low RPM, just fine. So a few days later, same, no issue, not even having it. So what I did was I ordered an O2 sensor delete. Now, I'm not going to get into whether it's good for the motor, one, because I don't know not to have an O2 sensor if it's good or bad. If the motor, obviously there's a lot of work I got to do to this bike. It's a daily rider. I'm not looking for maximum performance. I'm not looking for drag racing. I'm not looking for any of that right now. I do have, I believe this is a Megaphone, Hot Bodies Megaphone exhaust. So it does not have a power commander. I'm going to have to put a power commander. Once I get into tuning the bike and all that stuff and get the money for all that stuff, I'll do that slowly but surely. But the issue doesn't happen anymore. And prior to that, I was having to stay in second gear at 10 or 11,000 RPM just to be able to. And with this exhaust, it's just really, I didn't want to cruise around town, at 10 or 11,000 RPM in second gear. That's just annoying and asinine. So I had to find out the problem for yourself. As I'm sure you know, this is not the first time when buying a used bike from a dealership, which I'll probably get away from, and I encourage others to do so. Maybe I just go to crappy dealerships, but I bought a Victory highball one time, and I had a few issues with that. Dealership didn't want anything to do with it. If it wasn't for my bank at the time not funding the check, and me calling them and telling them to cancel it, and telling it was Victory of Mesa, which they're not there anymore. No Victory dealerships, as far as I'm concerned, are around in that area and anymore. But they finally fixed it. And I too had an O2 sensor issue on that bike, but apparently the 08s had a recall, from what I read. But I take it back to Chandler Motorsports, Power Sports, however you want to say, and their tech, mechanic, backyard guy, friend, whoever he is, took it out for a ride, and he said, well, it didn't happen. Whether it always happened to me, so I knew that most likely it was gonna it had happened to him, but they're not gonna want to fix it. They're in just to grabbing a bike, making sure the tires are good, the brakes work, and it starts, and getting it out of their shop for way more than what it's worth. But that's just how dealerships are. But yeah, so I just wanted to post this video about that because I know a lot of people were talking about, it's your kickstand sensor. It could be fuel, right? It could be what else was it? Oh, the exhaust valve. Now, if the exhaust valve is sticking, one thing I did find out, if the exhaust valve sticks, the way you can tell is your bike at idle will idle really high. So it will go to like 6,000, 7,000 RPM when you start it, if that exhaust valve is sticking. Now, what it will also do is when you give it throttle and as it goes back down, it will kill the bike. And the only reason I had that happen, where every stoplight I'd stop at or stops, while it was running, it was fine. But as soon as I would stop, that door would close, and I'm guessing it wouldn't let it exhaust out, and it would suffocate the bike. That's what I'm guessing. But as soon as I got home and took the wires out of it again, I didn't have the problem. Now I'm sure with the emissions, and if you live in a county or state, they have emissions, that's probably not going to pass. But I don't, so I'm good for now. I'll figure out all the other crap when it happens. Hope it don't, though. But yeah, so all those little things. But if you do have the problem with an 08 or Gsxr period, just try unplugging the O2 sensor. Right? Yeah, your F1 light's going to come on. It's not a big deal. If that solves the problem, though, just buy a delete kit. I bought a delete kit online. It came with a bolt with a washer. You just take the O2 sensor out, put the bolt in, tighten it down, and then you take the plug-in that they have for the delete and just plug it into your O2 sensor harness, and it shuts off your light. I don't have any light. Well, you gotta start the bike. Let me set the phone down. We'll pick it up. No light. That's one thing about Suzuki I really don't like, is you have to push in the clutch, engage the clutch to start the bike. I really don't care for that. But yeah, so O2 sensor was the problem with it running like crap, and it seems to be running a lot better. Not, you know, obviously to its full capabilities, because I don't have a power commander. I got this exhaust that was on the bike. I do like it. It's really loud, but at least it keeps people, most people, at least they hear you. But that's it. You guys have a good day.